Okay, Councillor Tuckwell, we're live, so you can start the meeting when you're ready.
Okay, good evening and a very warm welcome to the virtual meeting of the Central and South Planning Committee of the London Borough of Hillingdon. This is a virtual meeting that is also being broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell and I am the chairman of this evening's meeting. As we are in virtual online format, there are a few housekeeping guidelines that I just need to cover off. So can we please ensure that any mobile phones around you are set to silent or off? If you're wearing a headset, can you just ensure the microphone is just away from your mouth to avoid any excess noise? And please keep your microphone muted when not speaking and unmute to speak. Only one person may speak at a time and I as chairman will call those to speak. Okay, that's the online housekeeping. As again, we're in virtual format, I do need to do an attendance roll call. So I will call out members and officers' names. If you just indicate that you're here so the public can see who's attending. And we'll start with the Vice Chairman this evening, Councillor Chapman.
Good evening, Chairman. Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. The Labour Lead, Councillor Duncan.
Yes, present, Chairman. Thank you.
Good evening. Councillor Ahmed Wallana.
Good evening, all. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm present.
Good evening to you. Councillor Bira.
Good evening, everyone. I'm present.
Good evening. Councillor Chamdow, I think, is delayed. Will be joining us as soon as he can. So that leaves us Councillor Tubadar.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, all. I am present.
And Councillor Dillon.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm present.
Okay. Steve, I know we've got Councillor Brightman has offered her apologies, which we'll cover off formally later, but is that all members accounted for, apart from Councillor Chamdow?
All members accounted for, Chairman.
Okay. We also need to do the same for the officers that are supporting this evening's meeting. So we'll start off with our planning officer this evening, Meg Harani.
Good evening, everyone present.
Good evening. Head of Planning, James Roger.
Good evening, everyone. I'm present, Chairman.
Good evening. Our Transport Officer this evening, Alan Tilley.
Good evening, everybody. I'm present.
Good evening. Our Legal Advisor, Kerry Munro.
Good evening. Present.
Good evening. Our Enforcement Manager this evening, Desmond Adamakwe.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm present.
Good evening. And our Democratic Services Officer looking after us all this evening is Steve Clark.
Evening, Chairman. Present.
Good evening. That's all officers accounted for, Steve, is it?
Yep.
Good. Okay. In terms of technical meeting control, if any councillor leaves the meeting part way through for a period of time, lost connection, etc., then I will continue the meeting unless we are not quorum, which, as we know, is 3 councillors. Importantly, as we know, any councillor who just leave the meeting for a period of time will not be able to vote on the item they were not present for. Okay, that's the chairman's announcements and housekeeping covered off. So we can now begin to move into the main body of the agenda. So we will start then, Steve, with agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
We've had apologies for absence from Councillor Brightman, and then we'll also note that Councillor Chamdal is late to the call, but is intending to join.
Okay, thank you. We'll just look out for Councillor Chamdal and invite him in if he's to the next item if he's not present for the first one. Okay, agenda item 2 is declarations of interest in matters before this evening's meeting. Anybody wish to indicate? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. I wish to make a non-pecuniary declaration in relation to item 8 and 9, the garage site. I've had previous discussions about this with residents, so I think it's best if I withdraw from this, from those deliberations. Also, I wish to make a non-pecuniary declaration in terms of item 8, the dental practice. It is in fact my dental practice. I've been assured, though, I can still attend the meeting. I just want to record it for future reference, and I will withdraw from the first 2, but I will stay for number 10.
Okay, you happy with those reasons, Steve?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of interest?
Chairman, Steve, I've connected and I'm on board at the meeting.
Perfect.
Oh, fantastic.
Councillor Chamdal.
We've got Councillor Chamdal on board. Brilliant. Welcome. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay. So we'll just manage those when we get to those items for Councillor Chapman. That takes us to agenda item 3, which is to receive and agree the minutes of the last meeting, which was the 3rd of March. Any amendments to the minutes? I'll just see if anybody waves at me. No, I've got a couple of thumbs up there. That's good. So, Steve, we can take those items, agenda item 3, to be agreed. Okay, item 4 on the agenda this evening is to clarify any matters notified in advance or urgent, which there aren't any. And agenda item 5 is to confirm that there's 2 parts of this evening's meeting. Part 1, which is agenda items 6 to 11, which we heard in part 1. And agenda items 12 and 13 are private items and they will be heard in private. When we get to the end of agenda item 11, we will disconnect the YouTube feed and members and officers will discuss those 2 items in private. Okay, right, that now brings us to the main part of the meeting itself, which is to discuss the very first application in front of us this evening. This is a petition item, I believe, Steve, as well? Yeah, okay, so yes, we are now going to go in to talk about agenda item 6, which is 289 Lansbury Drive at Hayes. And I now pass the meeting over to Meg to take us through the presentation. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application relating to 289 Lansbury Drive in Hayes. The application is for the change of use of the property from what is currently a 5-bed, 6-person house in multiple occupation to a 9-person house in multiple occupation, which does involve a change from C4, use class C4, to a sui generis use. And there are a number of issues that have arisen. This is a semi-detached property, quite a large one. It has a large 2-storey extension attached to it, and the proposal also involves a single-storey rear extension. There are, as I say, a number of issues that have arisen. The first one is the size and scale of the extension and the impact that that has on the adjoining occupier, and that forms a reason for refusal. The second one is the fact that the only communal living space, which is a dining room, is totally enclosed. It has no windows and therefore no outlook or natural light, and that again is a reason for refusal. We are also recommending a reason on the basis of the parking provision, which doesn't comply with the council standards, and also on the provision of amenity space, which is also below what we would normally require. So if I can go to the presentation. That is the site. As members will see, it's a larger property than most of the surrounding properties, simply because it has had a 2-storey side extension. There are no constraints in terms of the area, and that is the current existing site plan and the proposed site plan. Members will see that 3 spaces are shown on the frontage. However, as you'll note from the photographs, it's very difficult to get into those spaces in the manner that's shown there. And in essence, they can't provide 3 spaces on the frontage without having a crossover across virtually the full width of the property. That's the existing floor plans. The site is currently in use as an HMO, and the existing elevations. There are no changes externally, and therefore there are no reasons relating to impact on street scene or character. And these are the proposed floor plans, the extension to the rear here. The adjoining property isn't extended, and at the depth that's proposed, your officers consider that there would be an impact on the window to the rear of this property on the adjoining site. And these are the elevations. Again, the only change is the single-storey extension and the aerial photograph. And that's the properties to the rear in the garden of the property. And that's the adjoining property. So the photographs taken from the adjoining property looking at the application site. and the window that would be impacted most is this one here. And again, yeah, there's a shared drive and then a frontage, and as members will see, there isn't a crossover across the whole of the frontage. The crossover is mainly serving the space here. So to get 3 spaces in across the frontage there, the crossover would need to be extended to a point which would not comply with the council standards. So they would find it very difficult to comply with or provide the 3 spaces that are shown on the plans. So for the reasons that are set out in the report, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Meg. This is a petition item. So have we got petition and applicant, Steve? Or
So we've received a written submission from the petitioner. We haven't received one from the applicant or the agent on this item.
Okay, and anything from councillors?
Nothing from more councillors. No.
Okay, so we've just got the one statement to go through. So over to you, Steve.
Okay. We would like the Planning Committee to consider the following concerns in relation to this petition. Our main reason for raising this petition is the increased disruption to our neighbourhood that will be caused by the expansion of HMOs. Having lived on the street for over 10 years alongside my neighbours who have been here even longer, I can say that we feel very strongly about this matter. HMO conversions in terraced houses mean big profits for private landlords and big savings for councils who want to accommodate individuals as cheaply as possible. But without the proper implementation of planning policy, such conversions cause huge suffering to everyone else, including neighbours who suffer from inevitable increases in noise and the extra comings and goings associated with such large and often transient populations, plus their guests living next door, and whole neighbourhoods, which are losing their character, community, and experience increased pressure on car parking. We've already noted a number of vehicles parked haphazardly blocking driveways with no consideration to others. We have also seen an increase in littering. HMOs belong to properties on big plots that have their own parking provision and limited noise transfer to neighbouring properties. They do not work in areas like ours. Parking and road safety. Given that Lansbury Drive is already such a busy residential road, which feeds into larger main roads, the strain already caused by an increase in cars and vans parked on the road from the HMO means traffic has reduced to 1-lane traffic by this property, and the visibility when moving in and out of driveways is now dangerously low. These 2 issues only make it more treacherous for families, children, elderly pedestrians and cyclists to use the roads safely. Given that the COVID pandemic has increased the level of outdoor exercise in our area, we would hate that to be overturned by the deteriorating road safety and congestion caused by HMOs and their expansion. There are images attached of the already haphazard parking caused by this HMO, which has made moving in and out of the neighbourhood properties dangerous and difficult. I'm just going to share those pictures that the petitioner is referring to. If I go there. So that's image 1. And that's image number 2. Okay, and then on with the statement. Transient residents. Having multiple schools around and families in close proximity, a clear argument on the grounds for child safety can be made due to the inconsistency and unknown danger of short-term residents. Given the nature of my work, which requires me to work different shifts, often working night shifts, the idea of leaving my young family alone, knowing that transient residents are living in such close proximity, is a definite concern for me and my neighbours. There was a sentence here which has been redacted following advice from our legal officer. Though the arrival of the Crossrail project to Greater West London will be an invaluable asset to the residents of Hillingdon Council, the priority of numerous HMOs across the borough should not displace families who have formed close neighbourhood ties and communities over the decades. Hopefully this statement has given Hillingdon Council an insight into the concerns from this community who are just trying to maintain and improve the quality of life and safety of our neighbourhood. That's it, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And I'd like to pass on my thanks to the petitioners for submitting their statement. I'm sure members will be taking that into account when we go on to the debate. So we are now at that point where we can, we've heard everything we need to hear. So who wants to open the debate on this item? Councillor Chapman.
Good evening, all. I can see why we are refusing the application. I support the officer's recommendation. Size of the extension, parking provision, amenity space, noise and disturbance. Obviously, as I can see within the reasons which have been quoted, noise and disturbance hasn't been put as a reason for refusal, and I wanted to see if the officers will consider to put in this as an extra reason for refusal.
Okay.
And having said everything I said, I would like to propose refusal on this one.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Chubadar. Meg, I think what the councillor is saying there is there a fifth reason that can be added in relation to noise and disturbance? I know it's an existing HMO, but is that another reason that we could pin on this one, do you think?
Thank you, Chairman. We did obviously consider that, and the increase in the number of residents. Clearly, at the current time, they can have a maximum of 6 residents, and your officers really had to take into account whether 3 additional residents would result in such noise and disturbance that we could justify a reason for refusal, and we didn't feel that 3 additional residents was the point where we could justify that refusal, which is why it's not recommended to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Meg. Councillor Chubadar, did you want to come back on that before I go to Councillor Chamdale?
Yes, because when you say 3 additional residents, you are not taking into account 3 additional residents will have friends, families, and guests, which could add to the noise and disturbance which they can be created. So if it was constantly 3 person, it is fine, per what you say. But this is not where it ends up with. Normally, there's quite a lot of extra activities generated by each person which is living in a property, because each person has got contacts, friends, etc., comings and goings. So I would like the officers to consider whether this could be added to the reasons.
Okay, I think there's some points there around it's not just 3 people. I suppose there is the vehicular traffic that comes with that, Meg. So is there anything you can consider in what's been said?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think if obviously members need to debate that issue, and if they do feel that that is a reason that they would want to put on, then obviously your officers wouldn't object to that. That debate, I think, happened previously on another application not so long ago at committee. So it is something that members can clearly recommend, and we would put the reason on. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, well let's hold that and see where the debate goes with other members. I can see I've got Councillor Chamdale, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Chapman have indicated. So we'll go to Councillor Chamdale first.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would second this. You've got 4 refusal reasons. The dimensions of the houses show that you've got the dining room, or the room that Meg mentioned, there were no windows in it. There's no parking scheme proposed in terms of what the parking capacity of the street is. It's got low P-tail value. It hasn't got much going for it. And it almost seems like the applicant wants to squeeze as much as he possibly can. About what Councillor Chapman did, I think we need to actually more than consider it. I think this noise and nuisance, for the officers to say a 50% increase in a household would not, they find it's not, the increase in intensification of the use will not result in harm. I don't follow that. The increase in 50%, not 5%, not 10%, 50%. You're nearly close to sort of doubling the household, 1.5 times. And all the movements which the petitioner said, you know, showed a picture of a van parked outside. So you multiply those problems by 1.5, just using pure maths. That is a problem. And I would support Councillor Chapman putting that as another reason, actually, you know, because I don't think so. We do enough of that because, okay, fine, we're going to work within the planning consideration of the laws and everything else, but this part we sometimes neglect to look at, that the potential of it. Well, you can't predict these things, but you can have an educated guess. And increasing it by 50%, I think that's a good educated guess.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdale. I've got Councillor Duncan and Councillor Chapman, but I've also seen James Rogers indicating, so it's always good to hear words of wisdom from James. So I'll let him interject at this point.
Yeah, whilst the debate was happening, I was checking on our back office in terms of any big HMOs, and we did refuse one on 31 Morello Avenue. It was dismissed at appeal, and it was dismissed on the noise ground, which is exactly what members would want to hear. And the precise wording was, the proposal would result in an over-intensive use of the site to the detriment of the residential amenities of adjoining occupiers by reason of noise and disturbance. And that got upheld at appeal on a large HMO. So I can't argue against the refusal reasons where I'm going with this. So yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with the fifth refusal reason, and I'd go so far as saying that members, if they do wish to add it, they'd use the wording I've just read out.
That's very useful. Thank you for interjecting there, James. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, James, for that advice. I'm happy to go with the noise reason, particularly as we know it's been upheld. And I think that's the main problem with HMOs, as we're finding from residents. I've just got a number of points. I noticed that even though this is being expanded, there is no downstairs bathroom for rooms 1 and 2. I know that's the existing situation, but it seems strange that you're putting more people in, and although there are bathrooms upstairs, there's nothing for people downstairs. I wondered whether that complied with the licensing. Also, the orientation of the building means that this 4-metre depth on the boundary with the semi to which this property is joined will be north facing, so it will really overshadow the whole of the rear private amenity space of the neighbouring property for pretty well much of the day. I don't think you're going to get much sun in there at all, so I think that strongly supports one of the reasons for refusal. The parking policy, I thought we had a parking policy now, and perhaps Alan would advise us on this, because we're having it crop up in other parts, that in order to stop people just driving over the pavement onto areas that they've hard surface to park on, they started to put in concrete bollards. And I know there were sort of complaints about this, and some have been taken out. But I thought that what they were saying to people where they have areas like this is you've got to provide a wall up to a low front wall on the property boundary up to where the crossover is, in order to stop people driving over the curb and give room for pedestrians and, you know, people in wheelchairs, people pushing prams and pushchairs, etc. So I would ask for some advice on that, because if that's the case, can we do something about that? I thought that it was our policy that 25% of gardens to the front of properties be retained in some form of soft... oh, excuse me, I don't know how to switch this off. I thought we had to retain 25% of garden, as I say, and they seem to have hard surfaced the whole of it, including bits at the side that may have been, oh, I'm sorry about this, I don't know how to switch this off, it's my landline. And the other suggestion, yeah, I wish I could, Roy. The other thing is that the comments received from people petitioning against this, I thought making the suggestion that HMOs should be in detached properties maybe is something that we should look at as a council and as a body, because that would tend to address some of the issues that are coming up on these HMOs where they are in terraced or semi-detached properties, and we're all concerned about the noise, the impact next door, when we are introducing or allowing these in areas of family housing. It's different if, you know, there are blocks of flats around commercial properties, it's a mixed area or town centre area. But when you're in areas of family housing, we do need to have policies that protect that. So I don't know whether that's something that we can look at in policy terms outside this meeting and with our policy team, but that seems to me a very good proposal, because then you won't get so much of the noise disturbance and issues that we're having to tackle. So if I could just leave those points and perhaps see if there's some response to those matters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duncan. If I can just pick the bones out of that, I think there's if I could ask Meg to pick up the point around the bathroom facilities, which we know are existing, and the 25% soft landscaping question that was put forward. If we can then move on to maybe Alan pick up the parking arrangements as well, and I'm sure James will have a view on the policy, the policy point that you raised at the end there around detached dwellings for future HMOs. So Meg, can you pick up those first couple of points?
Thank you, Chairman. With regard to the bathrooms, the property does have 2 bathrooms, shared bathrooms upstairs, obviously. I'm not sure of what the licensing requirements are. Obviously, they will need to get a license, but it's currently licensed for 6 persons. So obviously it complies with the licensing requirements currently, but whether it will comply in terms of having 2 bathrooms upstairs, there are a couple of ensuite rooms as well. So I would guess that in terms of the number of bathrooms that are provided, the property complies. Whether they're required to provide a bathroom downstairs or not for licensing reasons, I'm not sure. In terms of the landscaping to the frontage, there is some landscaping to the frontage, but obviously this property still retains currently its permitted development rights, even though it is an HMO. It's still, which is an anomaly that the government has provided, as it were, that HMOs that are up to 6 people still retain their permitted development rights, so they could hard surface the frontage as long as it's permeable without planning permission. But this is a long-standing, hard-standing, and there is some landscaping on the edge, which is still present. The photographs, I think, didn't quite clearly show that, but if members wish, I could show the photograph, which does show that. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Duncan, you okay with that before we go on to ask Alan to pick up the point around parking?
Yes, I thought as we're talking about it becoming 9, then it takes it out of that into sui generis, and maybe we may be able to comment on the hard surfacing, because it then wouldn't comply, would it? And I'm not talking about just all that hard surfacing. There were 3 sort of semicircular areas on the joint boundary with the property it's joined to that looked as if they had been flower beds and they've just been filled in with white gravel or stones or something.
Sorry, Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, Councillor Duncan is correct. They are flower beds, and they do look as though they have obviously they've got gravel of some sort in there, but again, As I say, it does retain its permitted development rights. Obviously, gravel is permeable, and they can do that currently without permission. If we were to grant, if members were to grant permission for any form of additional occupation in here, then we could look at providing landscaping within those flower beds rather than the gravel, and that might be a condition, but currently obviously we're recommending refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I can see Councillor Duncan nodding. So there's a point here around the parking allocation. So Alan, can you pick that up? And I think that's something that a lot of members will be eager to sort of understand how the parkings work, because I know Bollards was mentioned, and I think we've all had to deal with Bollards at some point in the last few weeks. So Alan, can you pick that bit up?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. For a HMO with up to 6 occupants, there should be 0.5 car parking space for each occupant. So for development similar to this, for 6 occupants, it would be 3 car parking spaces. When the development increases to a size of 9 occupants, we require a transport appraisal. For this application, a transport appraisal has not been submitted, so we've referred to the former UDP policies and looked at the local plan policies, taken into account that the site's got a very low PTAL, and we've determined that the site should provide 5 car parking spaces. There will be no uplift in the number of spaces provided, so there would be a deficit of 2 spaces. The site currently has 1 dropped curb, 1 vehicle crossover, that arguably could provide access to 3 spaces. Now, you also mentioned the bollards. Do I understand there that you are talking about bollards either side of the dropped curb to stop people overrunning the curb?
Yes, this is what's been happening. The council did start to put some in certain areas where people were doing what it looks like people could do in this at this property, where you can access part of the parking by the crossover, but other the other part of it next to the adjoining boundary, you've really got to go over a curb, all or part of it, to get access. And in order to stop that and preserve some pavement for pedestrians and wheelchair prams, etc., they started to put in these bollards. I understand that they were taking them out and they're thinking of putting other things in now, but also in another resident that I was speaking with about this, who had concerns with a neighbouring property that was being turned into an HMO. The officer I spoke to was an officer in highways, I think, who said that what they were requiring was a low wall to come across the front of the property, like a front boundary, up to the crossover, so that you've got room to enter across the crossover, and if you've got sufficient room to swing across in front of the onto the front area there, and one to come up on the drive behind you, but not all to drive across the curb and park up the whole frontage. And I wondered, the officer, I can't remember his name, but this seemed to be the policy now. And I wondered if that was the case, and if something would need to be mentioned here about that.
I think before Alan comes back on that, I think if we look at condition 4, it does actually say that they've not demonstrated sufficient parking and manoeuvring as a reason for refusal. That I think would cover it off. I think, because obviously the spaces are there, but if there isn't anywhere to manoeuvre, then they're insufficient.
Well, they've shown that there is space to manoeuvre, but it's manoeuvring illegally, isn't it? Well, not illegally, but not in accordance with our policy.
Yeah.
So is that our policy, Alan?
When a vehicle crossover is provided, the council could choose to put bollards either side of the tapers to stop people crossing into the property, overrunning the tapered curbs. The council could choose to do that, and then as they enter the curtilage of the premises, we do require, if there's a wall provided, that it's no higher than 0.6 of a metre, 1 metre along from the driveway, and that's so that people can't overrun, but also so that they're, just as they're about to leave their driveway, they've got unblocked vision of people walking along the footways. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And I think just to wrap things up, I'm sure James Roger will take away the point around detached properties with consideration of future HMOs. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, James.
Well, all I was going to say is policy DMH5 is the HMO policy, and I think it's important to be mindful of the criteria in that, and the criteria support the first 4 refusal reasons, and then criteria 3 says that there will be no adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties, and I think that criteria aligns with the noise refusal reason in effect. So I think with the additional refusal reason, I think you've got 5 robust refusal reasons, and I wouldn't advocate any further refusal reasons.
Thank you for that, James. Right, I did have Councillor Chapman and Councillor Ahmed Bollards' hands up, but have the points been covered off now, or is there something to add to the debate? Yeah. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, all my points have been covered off. I was going to mention Bollards, I was going to mention a 25% soak away, and I was going to support a 5th standalone amendment refusal reason, but they've all been very well covered already. I think we're pushing it an open door, to be honest here, Chairman. It's a no.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ahmed Bollards, do you have a point?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I had a point on sui generis use, and then there was already covered by Councillor Duncan, so that's fine.
Okay, right. Fantastic. I'm not seeing any other members indicate they wish to speak. So we are moved and we are seconded. Just to remind members, what we are voting on is to refuse agenda item 6 this evening, but we have also asked officers to include a 5th reason around noise and disturbance, and I think we'll delegate that to the head of planning to essentially use the wording that was prescribed earlier on, if members are happy with that. Okay, so we'll go to the vote then, and we'll start off with Councillor Chapman.
Go with officer's recommendation, Chairman, plus the 5th motion.
Thank you. Reason. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, refuse with the 5th reason for refusal, please.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Bollards?
Go with the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman, in addition to a 5th reason for refusal.
Good. Councillor Bira?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll go with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Chamdale, you seconded, and Councillor Tubadar, you moved. So that leaves us Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Officer's recommendations with the final amendment.
Okay, right, that is everybody. I make that 7 out of 7. Steve, do you concur?
Yes, unanimously refused with the additional refusal recommendation.
Okay, so I can confirm for everybody this evening that agenda item 6 is refused. Thank you very much for a very robust debate. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we can now move on then to agenda item 7, which is a monopole in Harmondsworth Road, West Drayton. There's no petition on this, I believe, Steve, so we can go straight to the presentation and then open it up for debate. So over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quick presentation. Members have seen quite a number of these, and this one is very similar to those that members have looked at over the past few committees. This is an application for a 20-metre monopole with additional 7 equipment cabinets, and the site is within the Greenbelt, and for the reasons that are set out, your officers are recommending refusal on visual amenity grounds, but also on Greenbelt grounds. Members will see from the plans that this is a standard design of monopole and equipment cabinets. There are a large number of cabinets taking quite a large area of space around the cabinets, and visually this site is very open and very prominent. So for that reason, it will have quite a considerable visual impact, and that is the reason for refusal. If I can go to the presentation. That's the site, and there is a existing monopole which is some distance away, which you'll see on a plan upcoming, which is being removed, but the two are not really relatable. This isn't a replacement of one that they're removing as such. It's a new position and a new monopole. So that's the constraints, and you'll see that the site is in the green belt, and it's at a junction of 3 roads or 2 roads, and in a very prominent position. This is the position of the current, and that's some distance from the proposed position. I would say at least 500 meters, if not more, and the two don't really relate to each other such that we could say that they would have, or it would have less of an impact. And that's the existing site plan and the existing monopole position. And that's the existing elevations of the monopole. And this is the proposed and the proposed elevations. That's the site. At the moment, it does have what I would say are probably unauthorised advertisements there, but in general, it's fairly open, some nice landscaping around it. And if I can just go back a plan, you'll see that it covers the pole is considerably higher than the existing trees, and the equipment cabinets. There are quite a large number. There's quite a sizable number of them, or quite a size of them, as it were, as well. So they together form quite a visual clutter to the area, and feel that that's the reason why it should be refused. This is the looking at the site from various angles. And the existing monopole is, as I say, some distance along here. So for the 2 reasons that are given within the report, we are recommending refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Meg. As we often know, it wouldn't be a Central and South Committee meeting if we didn't have a monopole to debate, so that makes no difference to this meeting. So I've got a number of councillors indicating. I've got Councillor Duncan, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Dillon, and I just saw Councillor Tubadar put his hand up there. So Councillor Duncan, or is that an old hand from last time?
No, it's a new hand.
It's a new hand.
It's a
okay.
new hand, Chairman.
You're first.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'd like to move officer's recommendation. I think just seeing the photographs and knowing that this is going to tower above those that group of very mature and very attractive trees. It's green belt, it's, you know, an open area, and it can be seen from a long way away. And I think, you know, it's a good report, good recommendation. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, please.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Duncan. Let's go to Councillor Chapman, who was next to indicate.
Thank you, Chairman. Very happy to second the proposal. It's in a very prominent position. I mean, it's in danger. If it was put up, it'd almost become a landmark and a reference point. It would become a conversation piece. I've got no problems with mass per se. You know, we've all got mobile phones, but they've got to be done in the right way. And this is just totally in the wrong position. I would be. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Dillon?
Nothing further to add. It's all been said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Tubadar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where are they proposing to put the 7 extra cabinets? because I look at the pavement on the area which was indicated, and it's not really wide. And the size of the new cabinets which I've seen, which are coming with monopoles of G5, their depth are at least 1 meter. So have they actually indicated where they're going to put the cabinets? And could that be also added to the reasons for refusal? I support whatever the other councillors previous to me had mentioned as well, and support the officer's recommendations.
Yeah, I think the location of the cabinets is in the plan pack, but we'll ask Meg maybe to pick that up and maybe flash the picture up again if necessary. If not, you can just take the councillor through that.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just go back to the presentation and show the layout plan. So that's the positioning that's being proposed. So it will be on the grassed area rather than the footpath that the cabinets and the monopole is going. It's going virtually towards the back of that grassed area that you saw in the photographs, and as is the monopole. So if I can go further forward to the photographs, it's virtually in these positions here that the cabinets and the monopole will be sited. If you can see my marker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's in that position there at the back, by the trees, or close to the trees. So there is room there, obviously, for these, but they do create quite a. There's quite a number of them. They're quite a large size, and they do create quite a lot of clutter, which is a reason for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
I mean, obviously, you can see where they're going to put them, and these cabinets are not what you call passive. Nowadays, when I go by any of these monopoles, I hear massive amount of noise going off inside them. So therefore, they put in electronic equipment, fans, etc., etc. So putting cabinets in that location is not only one issue. Trying to deliver services to those areas also could and would cause some form of disturbance. How are they going to run electricity, for example, to those areas? But having heard what Mick said, I thank you for your explanation and support the refusal.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chamdale, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think Councillor Chapman just alluded to what I was going to say. I agree with everything everybody said. It's just another one of those throwing a dart at a board and saying, look, where does it land? Let's put something there. This noise thing. Yeah. I mean, Meg, is any policy on this noise? Because just like Councillor Chapman, I've heard this noise as well. I can understand there's a roadway noise and I suppose decibels and all that. But surely if you're going to place it near, say, a more populated area, possibly. Could we look into that as to how that noise, what kind of noise it emits, and ask them to tell us?
Sorry, Chairman, if I can come through.
I'll just interject there. I think if we were looking to approve this, then we might be having a debate around a noise condition or something to limit the amount of noise. But if you want to pick up a very valid point that's being picked up there, just for information, I guess, for future applications. I'm sure we're going to get a few.
Thank you, Chairman. If we do have a number that have gone up, so we can check and ask our noise experts to obviously check as to whether they make a noise that might lead to disturbance or not. So we hopefully will be better informed if we get an application within a more populated area. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get a little line in the minutes as well to ensure that point is captured for future reference. Okay, I'm not seeing any other councillors indicate we are moved and seconded on this application, so I think we can now go to the vote. So Councillor Chapman, you seconded. Councillor Duncan, you moved. So that's Councillor Ahmed Rallana.
Go with the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bira? Councillor Bira? I can see your lips moving, that's it.
Sorry, Chairman. I go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Good man. Thank you very much. Councillor Chamdow?
Officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar?
For refusal, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon?
For refusal, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Steve, I make that unanimous 7 votes for refusal. Is that correct?
Yes, unanimously refused, Chairman.
Cool. I can confirm that agenda item 7 this evening is refused. Thank you very much. Okay, now that moves us on to agenda item 8 and 9 that we're going to take together. And Councillor Chapman is going to switch his camera off and go on to mute for the duration of these two applications. But they are 2 applications for the same site, but they are slight amendments to an already consented plan. So we are, as a committee, discussing the amendments as the overall plan has been already approved. But we'll take the presentations together, and then we'll have to vote separately on agenda items 8 and 9. So a little bit of logistics to work through once we get to that point. So, Meg, can you talk us through agenda items 8 and 9, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just general reference, if I can ask members to go to page 47, the relevant planning history, they'll note from that the very first application noted there, 2019-2504. They'll see that planning permission was granted for the demolition of the garages and the construction of 3 4-bedroom houses. And that was granted in April of last year. This is an application to amend, if you like, that permission, although it would be a new permission that's granted. And the amendment in terms of item 8, if I can go to the plans, it's probably easier to just show the amendments that are proposed on the plans. So if I go to the presentation, and item 8, this is the site, which would be the same for both items 8 and 9, and the constraints plan, and the existing site plan, and the proposed plan. So the proposed site plan is shown there, and this was the design that was approved, other than these 3 elements to the rear. They're single-story elements, and they are 3.5 metres deep with a flat roof, and that is the only amendment to the permission that was granted back in April 2020, which is still a live permission and can obviously be implemented. That does obviously reduce the amount of amenity space that's available, but the amenity space that is being provided still complies with the council's requirements, and all other requirements are met in terms of the size of the units, the parking, and the impact on adjoining occupiers. So in terms of item 9, that is the change from the approved plan. In terms of item 8, that is the change from the approved plans. If I can show you the photographs and then go to item 9. These photographs obviously relate to both items. That's leading up to the site entrance, and the access road. Obviously that will be made up, and the access is widened with a footpath, and these are the garages that are being removed and looking out towards the access road and the adjoining properties. So these And then item 9, again, the same sites and constraint plans. And in this case, the change is in the design of the building. Members will recall that there was a full hip proposed on the approved plans. In this case, what's being proposed is half hip, half gable. What's known as a Dutch gable is being proposed, and that is the only amendment. There's no single story element being proposed in this particular case. So it's an increase in the size of the rooms that are being provided in the roof space in this particular case, and that is the only amendment. Given its backland location, the fact that it's not particularly visible other than from surrounding properties, we feel that it would be difficult to refuse this change in design, and therefore we've recommended it for approval. So the two, again, the photographs that you saw previously apply, and so if I can just recap, the amendment, item 8 amendment, is the single story element added to the rear of the building. Item 9 amendment is a change in the roof design from a hip to a Dutch gable. For both, the application is recommended for, or the applications are recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, no, thank you very much for taking us through that. So we're going to have to work through, we've got 2 applications here, but we're going to have to work through those. So I can see 3 councillors indicating. Councillor Borough. You're still on mute, Councillor Borough.
That was from my old hand, actually.
That's it.
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Yeah. I think it's a very good report, and I go with the officer's recommendation to approve it.
Okay. Good. That's nice and simple. In terms of where you stand on that one. So Councillor Duncan, then I've got Councillor Dillon afterwards. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, I'd like to second that. I mean, in effect, the first application is just adding the equivalent of a single-storey rear extension, and the second one with the Dutch gable just gives a bit more headroom in the loft rooms, which are already approved anyway. So I think it's maximising the development, the use of that in an acceptable way. It meets all our policies, so I have no problem with it. Happy to second it. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you, Councillor Duncan, and I've got Councillor Dillon indicating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without not wanting to repeat what's been said before, really, Councillor Duncan got there before me. Nothing really to add. Happy to move.
Okay. Right, am I seeing any other? Oh, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, not a great fan of these, but there's not a lot we can do. The planning permission has already been granted. The only concern was actually the access, but this is the advantage of having a look at photographs. With the photographs, you can actually then see it is quite large, and thankfully we've got pedestrians as well as vehicle movements. Plenty of space, so yeah, I'll go for it as well.
Okay, no, thank you. I'm going to need some proposers and seconders for agenda item 9 as well, because we're talking about agenda item 8 here. So we will take the vote on, if I'm not seeing, well, Councillor Chapman, you're indicating.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that you wanted the proposer for the agenda number 9. That's why I put my hands up. Is that what you wanted to do now or later?
Let's do the vote on number 8 first and get that out of the way and make it clean cut, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So we are moved and seconded for agenda item 8, so we can go straight to the vote. If I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, no. So Councillor Chapman is sitting this one out. Councillor Duncan seconded. So Councillor Ahmed Wallana.
Go with the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
So the officer's recommendation, please, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
For approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon.
For approval.
Thank you. Okay, Steve, I make that 6 out of 6 with Councillor Chapman obviously sitting this one out. So agenda item 8 is approved. Can you confirm?
Indeed, Chairman.
Okay, agenda item 8 is approved. So now I'm looking for a bit of help to get a mover and seconder for agenda item 9. Councillor Duncan?
I'd like to move agenda item 9, please.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone looking to second for me? Councillor Tubadale?
I would like to second item 9, please.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, so we can now go to the votes on agenda item 9. So Councillor Chapman, as we know, is sitting this one out. Councillor Duncan moved. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Go with the officer's recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bira.
I'll go with officer's recommendation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal.
Officer's recommendation, please, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar, you seconded. That leaves Councillor Dillon.
Officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, Steve, 6 out of 6 for approval. Can you confirm?
Yep, that one's also unanimously approved.
Okay. Agenda items 8 and 9 this evening have been unanimously approved. Thank you very much for your support on those and good debate. Right, so we can now swiftly move on to agenda item 10, which is the dental practice at 267 Long Lane in Hillingdon. So Meg, can I pass the baton to you to take members through your presentation, please?
Thanks,
Sorry,
Chairman.
Can I just come in there just to make sure that Councillor Chapman's back in the...
He is. I can see him waving at me. Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Perfect.
No, well recovered. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Chapman. Meg, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application that relates to 267 Long Lane, which is a detached property currently in use as a dental surgery with a 2-bed flat attached or within it as well. And the proposal is to convert this 2-bed flat into part of the surgery to provide additional facilities. As members will know, one of the overriding policies or planning policies that this council has, and its policy throughout London, is the loss of residential, and generally that is unacceptable unless there are very good reasons why it should be allowed. And in this particular case, we did consult with our planning policy colleagues who draw up the policies that the council work to. And if I can point members to page 96 and the comments received from the council's planning policy team under the principle of development. If I can summarise what they're saying, basically there are some exceptions that can be made to the loss of residential policy, and one of those is the provision of health and community facilities, and this qualifies for that, and therefore they feel that in this particular case, with the additional facilities that have been provided, with the fact that it takes pressure off Hillingdon Hospital and people being referred to, having to be referred to Hillingdon Hospital and waiting times and so on, that there is a justified argument in this case for allowing the loss of the residential. So in principle, the loss of the residential is acceptable. There are no external alterations proposed, so there is no impact on the street scene, no impact on adjoining properties in terms of loss of light, outlook, etc. Obviously, there will be some increased activity. This is a detached property, so that is in its favour. There will be some increased activity. Again, we have comments, quite a long set of comments from our highways colleagues. And again, if I can summarise, they don't object to this. The parking stress survey was carried out, which showed that there was parking available in the surrounding streets, and that the increase that may result from the increased facilities that are being provided, the increase in traffic generation would be fairly minimal, and it would be spread across the day. So they have no objections to that. So your officers feel that this is one of the very few exceptions where we would recommend the loss of residential, and for that reason, for the reasons that I've outlined, we are recommending that. Thank you, Chairman. If I can just go to the presentation. That's the site, and you'll see that it is in an area of special local character, but there are no external alterations, so no impact on that. And this is the existing plans. The upstairs 2 beds and a lounge. The downstairs has the kitchen for the flat, and then the rest of the downstairs is part of the surgery, and the existing elevations, which don't change. And as you can see from this, the downstairs is converted to a consultation room, and then upstairs you have a number of surgery and a staff room being provided in connection with the dental surgery. As I said before, no external alterations. The parking layout doesn't change. And these are the photographs. It is fully hard stand with some planting on the edges, and all that remains. And that's the rear of the site again, and not changed at all. And you can see it does provide a number of parking spaces currently, and that that will remain as indicated on the plan. So for the reasons that I've outlined, recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for taking us through that, Meg. Right, I've got Steve indicating, Steve Clark. I'm going to let you come in before we open it up to members.
Thanks, Chairman. It's just a note on this item. We've had Councillor Ray Graham, Ward Councillor for Uxbridge North. He's come in on this item and asked the committee to note that he supports it wholeheartedly. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll capture that in the minutes as well. So I've got a number of councillors indicating here, starting with Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to see this, because we're always talking about the need for more doctor surgeries, dental surgeries and health infrastructure. The borough's experienced a great deal of development, and if the master brewer development goes ahead, then there's going to be even more residential development and people needing these facilities. It is in an existing place, it's on a bus route, so people could arrive a little distance away by bus, and I'm very pleased to see it. So I'd like to move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Duncan. I've got Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just doing a quick Google Maps search. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 surgeries within a square mile of Sweetcroft. Sweetcroft being one of the 8. Does that then justify the loss of the 2-bed flat? And the fact that we've got 8 is more than enough, I would think.
Meg, did you want to come in on that point?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure that we would take into account the number of surgeries, as it were, because obviously they're all being used, but and obviously some of them might be doctor surgery, some are dental surgery. So, but it's the additional facilities that are being provided in this particular case. Obviously, it's an existing surgery, and they need to provide these additional facilities. They're doing that so they don't have to refer patients to Hillingdon Hospital either for treatment or for x-rays and so on. So It's the additional facilities that are being provided rather than a new surgery. That is the reason why we're recommending it. Thank you, Chairman.
I think before we let Councillor Dillon come back on that, I think what's unique about this application is the X-ray facility, and that will then necessitate people to go to here rather than go to Hillingdon Hospital. But maybe James, did you want to come in? Have you got anything to add to that before we go back to Councillor Dillon?
I don't think I've got anything to add. I think Meg's has effectively covered all the things I might possibly say in this case.
Okay. Councillor Dillon?
Yeah, no, there are 8 dental surgeries or clinics and dental surgeries around the area. Hence the question, there weren't GP surgeries. Okay, thanks for the explanation, Meg.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second the proposal. I do think it satisfies the exceptional circumstances criteria, and I'm glad to see it's being used in this case. My only misgivings, and I should emphasise they're not misgivings that override my support, my only misgivings are in terms of the parking and, shall we say, the public transport element. Reference is made to the fact, well, a distinction is made between a PTAL of 2 and a real world PTAL, which I find that an interesting sort of reference. I'd like clarification on what constitutes a real world PTAL. I mean, are we to dismiss PTALs going forwards? Bearing in mind it's over the road from my ward, there's only actually one regular bus route that goes past it, which is the 278. The U2 skirts around Oak Farm Estate. So there's only actually 2 regular bus routes that go past there, albeit very frequent bus routes. Thirdly, on-street parking stress surveys, I'm assuming these were done in 2019 pre-COVID, bearing in mind the last application was then. They were also done, of course, prior to the master brewer being signed off. So, but as a local councillor, I'm currently bracing myself for a lot of residents-only parking applications, shall we say. So I'd like guidance on the modern-day relevance and validity of the 2019 stress surveys. Thank you.
Okay, Meg, 3 points there. PTAL, the difference between what it is and real world, as it's mentioned in the reports. The bus routes are the bus routes, I guess. I'm not sure you can add anything more to that. And then obviously the parking assessment, which is a year or so old now. So you able to cover those off?
Thank you, Chairman. I think possibly there might be questions for Alan, but
yeah. You might be right there, actually. Yeah.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I had my microphone turned on. Real world PTAL. When I'm in the office and I call up the Transport for London portal, where you can see the map of the PTAL, you see a series of hexagonals, all different colours. I might live at number 3. You might live at number 5. I'm PTAL 5. My next door neighbour's PTAL 6. And similarly, a few hundred metres away, it might drop down to PTAL 2. But in this situation, people will be coming to the dentist every 6 months, every 4 months. They'll be familiar with the journey. They'll be familiar with where they can park. So they're accustomed to public transport provision. So PTAL 2 is poor, well, moderate access to public transport. But for the users of the dental surgery, they will be accustomed to where the buses run from, where they can park. So access to the surgery is considered better in the real world than the mapping portal on the Transport for London website might suggest.
There you go. Councillor Chapman, anything to come back on that one?
One Alan to another, I think that was an excellent answer, and I commend him to his boss. No, I do appreciate that we're talking about a building that's 600 yards from a tube station, and basically, if it was 300 yards closer, it'd probably be PTAL 5 with exactly the same provision. It's just that it's closer to the tube station. But I just wanted to test the robustness of the argument, shall we say? As I said, Chairman, I'm more than happy to second the proposal.
Yep. Okay, no, thank you. Right, I've got a couple of other councillors indicating. I've got Councillor Ahmed Wallana, followed by Councillor Tubidar.
Mr. Chairman, I just I would really like to appreciate officers for making this very wonderful report on this one. This is a very good initiative for the local residents. They are providing medical and health services. It's a very, very local, and I'm more than happy to support this.
Okay. Thank you. I've got Councillor Tubadar followed by Councillor Chamdal. I'm sure he had his hand up there at some point, but Councillor Tubadar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to second the proposal and based on supporting the officer's recommendation. However, that's already been done, so therefore I don't have much to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal, anything fresh to add to the debate?
Yeah, on what Councillor Dillon said, you know, there's 8 surgeries around there. I think we're making the peg fit firmly, squarely into a round hole, whatever. Yeah, because we've had a couple of refusals when they were going to build and still keep the residential part of it, but yet it was refused. And now we're getting rid of the residential part, and the officers are recommending approval. It is what it is. The other comment is about this real world. I'm not happy about that comment. It shouldn't be in this report. The reason being why is this comment alone itself will open up the doors for when we talk about planning, and we say as experienced planning councillors, in the real world, this is what's going to happen. Yeah, it's fine what the plans are saying, it's fine what this is saying, but in the real world, this is what's going to happen. So I understand what Mr. Tilley said, and I go along with it. He's exactly right, you know, because the pizza value can change from one household to another. But I would prefer to leave those comments out of a report, because it just opens a door to other things. Because we know we've had applications where we know what's going to happen next in the real world, but we can't do anything about it because that's the way it's been done. That's the way the applicant, the agents put forward these plannings. So I'm happy to go with it along with this and go with the officer's recommendation.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Councillor Chamdal. I'm sure Steve will get a line or two in the minutes in relation to the concerns around the real world phrase in future applications. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, so I think we can go to the vote on this one. So Councillor Chapman, you seconded. Councillor Duncan, you moved. So that's Councillor Ahmed Wallana.
Go with the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bira?
I go with the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal?
I'll go with the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar?
For approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon?
Abstain, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Steve, I make that 6-4 and 1 abstention. So agenda item 10 this evening is approved. Can you confirm?
Indeed, Chairman.
Okay. No, thank you very much, everybody, for another robust debate. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the applications this evening, but we do have agenda item 11, which is the standard quarterly S106-278 monitoring reports. It's for the committee to note. I don't think there's any comments, anybody wants to make anything on this, or are we just happy to note it? Councillor Duncan, you indicating?
Yes, I'm happy to note this, but we have requested several times, can we have a printout of cell report, which is the equivalent kind of thing? I know it's different parameters, different legal parameters, but can we still make that request? I understand from finance officers that it's just listed in the same way and we could see it. So I don't know why we can't. So just another request for it.
Okay, I think we'll get that captured in the notes as well, I think, yeah. Okay, well, if we're happy then to note and obviously taking on board Councillor Duncan's comments as well, we can move on from agenda item 11. That brings us to the end of part 1 of this evening's meeting. So for anybody that has been watching us on YouTube, I hope you've enjoyed it. Some very robust debate from members with support from officers. So I'd like to thank members and officers with those watching on YouTube but we are unfortunately going to have to say goodnight to you as we go into part 2, which is private. So yeah, good night to those watching on YouTube. Steve, can you close the feed down, please?